Hello, I'm Mike Meskill. Welcome to me and Spencer Lyons' class, a non-production career in theater. I'm one of two guides. I'll be the primary person talking today, and my good friend Spencer Lyons will be filling in as well. So a little bit about the two of us. Who are these guys and why should I listen to them? We'll get to more of why you should listen to us in a little bit, but just a little background on the screen now. So my background was in Navy as an electronics technician. Went to School of the Arts in North Carolina, and where I studied technical design and production with an emphasis in lighting. I then spent about 4.5 months interning at MGM Grand in Las Vegas when it was the EFX show, and then I came to ETC as an intern. So I went from intern to field service, and then I went into management. Currently, I'm the international service manager at ETC. I've done a lot of ALDing, Madison Opera. I lived in Munich, so I was designing for a company called BME Theater in Munich as they're an English-speaking theater group in Munich. So I kind of still do production, but clearly I kind of came out of college and pretty much interned at ETC and came to ETC. So it was a very non-production professional career for me. I didn't leave college and tour or go work at a Lord A theater at any point. I pretty much came here. A little bit on Spencer. I'm gonna talk for him. He can just sit quietly on the sidelines. Of course, like all of us who do technical theater, he did some high school technician work. It all begins. He then studied at Eastern Michigan University. Did some bus and truck, did some film work in Willington, North Carolina, and then back to Michigan. He got his MFA in lighting design from Wayne State. My wife's alma mater for any of you Wayne State people out there. And then he was hired by myself to come to ETC to work in field service. And that's kind of how Spencer got into his non-production career. He now works as a field project coordinator, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is, that kind of job. And he still does production on the side too. So he's now working as an ALD for Madison Opera, and he does things to help his wife, who's a costume designer. So he kind of keeps his toe in the water. And you'll find as we go through and talk about non-production careers in theater, it doesn't mean that you have to disconnect from the theater world that you love or that you train in or that you're passionate about. You can have these other jobs all over the country. They're available, and you can still work. There's community theater, there's nonprofit theater, everywhere you go. So even though I came right to ETC, which is a manufacturing company, I do a lot of theater. I go to a lot of theater. I volunteer for theaters. You know, I have a lot of opportunity to do other production work. So let's talk about what is a non-production career, okay? Normally, a lot of people, I've given this class a couple of times as a master class at some universities. I first gave it about 4 years ago in North Carolina as a master class. Because normally, students who are studying technical theater, whether it's lighting design or production management or technical direction, you're focused on, I'm getting my degree, I wanna go on tour. I'm getting my degree, I wanna go work on Broadway. I wanna go work at the Guthrie, you know, I want to work in Lord A, Lord B theaters, and it's all production. I want to design, I want to be a technician, I want to be a board operator, because that's pretty much what all your training is driving you towards. And that's kind of your vision of the industry when you're a student. It's kind of that single vision of, I'm going into theater, of course I'm going to work in the theater, okay? So I'm gonna kind of dispel some of that, and I'm gonna use this slide with this saying. For every actor on the stage, there are 5 people backstage essentially supporting them, okay? For every single actor, 5 people in support backstage. To take that to the next level, for about every 5 people working backstage in a production capacity, there could be up to 20 people in our industry that are supporting those people backstage, okay? So you very quickly start seeing, you know, the exponential growth of the number of people involved in supporting any single actor on the screen or on the stage. So you have direct production people, and you have an army of people behind them supplying equipment and goods and services so that that production can happen. So when we talk about non-production careers, we're talking kind of support services to people that are doing production. And let me say, production isn't just on the theater. We're going to talk a little bit about how ETC sees production and how we see the industry. So we're going to focus on a couple of things. We're going to focus on what I know and what Spencer knows is a basis for our discussion today, and that's ETC. Because all of ETC, from top to bottom, is essentially a non-production career in theater. We don't do shows here. Sometimes I think Fred Foster thinks we're doing shows here because we build sets and we paint sets and we tour our sets to trade shows and we do events, and that's kind of how we keep our theater roots, and it's a soul of our company to do production, but we're a manufacturing company. So in the end, we're always a manufacturing company no matter how many theater people we hire. So we're going to focus on ETC and what we're doing and how we look at the industry, and then we're going to tag in other parts. But using ETC is a good example because we cover a wide range of things. And then after that, I'm going to talk a little bit about how being a theater major can prepare you for success in other fields and in life. And in other fields, I mean fields that are not associated with theater all the time. Technical theater majors, for the most part, end up in that career, right? It's not like they're a general, I got a degree in history and now I'm a manager at Walmart. People that really are dedicated and have a commitment to theater and technical theater somehow find their way either into production or into non-production careers. We tend to do something related to our field. But like a lot of people, after X number of years, we decide, I want to change careers. And a lot of people will have 4 or 5 different dissimilar careers in their lifetime. Some of us will have one. I'll die at my desk at ETC. That's my career. I came here. I'll be there till I keel over and they'll wheel me out the front door. But it's not unusual to change. And there's been a lot of research, and I've known a lot of people that kind of did 10, 15 years either in production or a non-production career, and then they went and did something else. And I'm going to go through the second half of this presentation of how you can look at your technical theater skills and what you're learning in colleges, what you're doing for a job, and how that equates to working in any other field or endeavor, and how it kind of relates to life in general. Theater people are kind of special. Some of us are very special and other people are very, very special, but we're an interesting group of people. And being that interesting group, being around that type of group, you have to adapt. You have a lot of skill sets that makes you more marketable in the business world, right? I think my theater background makes me a better manager over the years because of what I learned working in the theater. So on the screen right now is kind of it's not all-encompassing, but it's kind of a screenshot of how ETC sees the industry. Okay, and the industry for us, for ETC, and in general, this applies not just for ETC, is more than just the theater. You've got one picture up there that's just of a theater, but you have theaters in a lot of places, and ships is one of them. We do a lot of cruise ships. We do shows on cruise ships. There's lighting, there's sound, there's rigging. We do television studios. We do movie studios. In the middle, there's a picture of the Rainforest Cafe. And that's kind of architectural. It's in a segment that ETC calls architectural. It's kind of entertainment, well, architectural, architainment. It's architectural entertainment. We do architectural interiors, convention centers, and we do churches. And the first time I did this presentation, people looked at the church and said, well, how much work is there in churches? And I'll tell you, it's a multi-billion-dollar business for audio, video, lighting. It's unbelievable how much work ETC, other suppliers, dealerships do churches. We have these big churches that do transmitting, they do production, they do lighting, they do Christmas shows and pageants. So a lot of people don't necessarily think about a church as a place where your skills may be relevant. If you're somebody that's a member of a church or a larger church, there's always that opportunity that you're doing volunteer work there in their lighting system. So this is kind of an overview of how ETC is looking at the industry. For those of you that aren't familiar with how ETC works, you'll love this because it's going to take you through all the different positions at ETC, how this company works, and all the roles and jobs that are available at ETC. For those of you that have already had some sort of a class that's like, oh, here's how ETC works, you'll have to hang in there with me. So we're going to start this really from the beginning in marketing, right? And most people think of marketing as advertising, usually, right? We're going to take out ads. We're print ad, we're going to make a TV ad, we're going to have marketing people. But at a manufacturing company at ETC, marketing kind of is two things, and this is true of most manufacturing companies. You have product specification, right? Researching the market, what does the lighting industry want? What's the new product that they're hungry for, right? So at one point we had to say, wow, for 5 years everybody said, when's ETC gonna make an ellipsoidal LED fixture? When's ETC gonna make an ellipsoidal LED fixture? And finally the product marketer at ETC like woke up, he was like, what? Yeah, let's make an LED fixture. And then we go and we design an LED fixture. It's actually a lot of work, right? Some things make sense. It's like, oh yeah, of course we have to do that. But normally you have to see where the trends are going, right? How popular are LEDs are gonna be? Can we make a better LED than everybody else, right? For those of you that don't know, at ETC, one of the reasons we didn't have LEDs for a long time was because our market philosophy was, we're not a us-two company. Oh, well, they're making LEDs, so we have to make them too. Okay, we need to make an LED, it's gotta be better. It's gotta leap over what other people are doing. So we've got a market manager that's talking to the market, looking at the technologies, trying to figure out, can we leapfrog our competition? And how do we have to do that? What kind of LED do we need, right? We came up, we have X7 and it can do this, and we have these varieties. At ETC, as a lighting company, that person for fixtures is a theater person. They come from theater backgrounds. For a long time, it was a gentleman named Tom Littrell, who was like an old 70s tour guy and been there, done that in the industry for years, knew tons of people. Well, eventually he was like, I want to settle down. I don't want to be on tour anymore. I'm getting old. Don't tell Tom I said that. No, he'd agree. He's getting old. And he came to ETC to be our fixtures marketing manager. He had a ton of experience, knew a ton of people. He can interact with the market, get information. What does the market want? Oh, the market wants LEDs. Okay, how do we do that? And he starts writing a specification. And that goes across the board. Same with new consoles. What do people want in a new console? Well, they want screens built into the console. Okay, screens built into the console. A year later, well, they've got to be touch screens built into the console. Okay, we'll build touch screens. Oh, they need to be multi-point touch screens built into the console. Okay. So we've got a market manager, Matt Kerr, is he's our associate market manager for entertainment. Matt, I've known Matt, I used to design with Matt. He came in, ETC phone support, worked as a technical support specialist, and then moved to marketing, right? He was a designer, a technician, worked locally in Madison for a long time, in production. He got married, he had his first child. He's like, man, I need to get me a 9-to-5 job. And so he came to ETC. And he went into phone support, which was mostly a 9-to-5 job. And now he's in marketing, right? That's like a 10-to-2 job, marketing, right? 3 martini lunches and everything. But, so that's a non-production career at ETC, is marketing. The other side of the marketing equation is what we call MarComms, marketing and communication. And that's what most people think about. It's advertising, it's graphic design. So it's a little more than advertising, but it's the graphic design, what our literature is looking like. And at ETC, we have several departments kind of in marketing. There's the product marketers, which are specialized in specifying, and they're all from theater backgrounds. We've got technical writing. All of our documentation comes out of a technical writing department that's part of marketing. Everybody in that department's from some form of theater background. I think a couple stage managers, a couple technical services people, right? Marketing and communication. So our product manual is a form of communications. Okay, so that's marketing. Any questions about kind of marketing careers? Marketing is kind of, even when you get out of production, like if you were to come to ETC and start in services, it's kind of a place where you have to gather a lot of information. You kind of have to have some time in the industry, understand ETC, understand our industry, before you can really go out and interact with it. So, the next place is research and development. Now, historically, you wouldn't think of research and development as being a place that you could take your theater degree, but that's not true. At its core, research and development is software engineering, programming on the console, programming code, mechanical engineering, it's electrical engineering, it's industrial design, right? All of our consoles have to look cool. I think Fred has that written somewhere, Fred has to think it looks cool. We're not going to sell it. It's got to be, it's not sexy enough. Make it sexier, right? That's industrial design, and there's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of visual, how does it look? But then you need an engineer to say, man, that thing looks like it belongs in the bat cave. How are we going to build that or design it? So you need an electrical engineer and a mechanical engineer to do that. But at ETC and I've had friends through the years that have worked at other manufacturers in the lighting industry, we have a lot of lighting people involved in our research and development for a couple reasons. One, because in technical theater, most of us are geeks to a certain extent. We like our technology. We're watching Star Trek or Star Wars, or we're fighting about Star Trek versus Star Wars, one or the other. But a lot of us do coding. We write our little computer programs. We've got an interest in technology outside of our normal work. And a lot of those people that have had a theater background, maybe they minored in computer sciences, or vice versa. They majored in computer sciences or in in software engineering, but they also kind of worked in theater at college. And they find their way to R&D at a company like ETC, and they've got a theater background, okay? Also in our R&D department, we have R&D project managers and technical project managers who kind of help oversee and move projects along. And a technical product manager, I think a couple of them right now came out of, once again, technical services. Theater guys that came out of production, came into working in technical services, and eventually kind of moved into the world of R&D because they had acquired a lot of knowledge about a specific product and were able to go onto that. So even though R&D tends to be engineering core related, at a company like ETC, if you're working in lighting manufacturing, other manufacturers, a lot of theater people, just because we kind of have an interest in that, and a lot of guys learn how to write little programs and stuff like that, and they end up in R&D. The next area we're going to talk about is sales, okay? Way back, I don't know, way back 3 slides ago, we talked about, the architect, the consultant, the engineers, and the dealer being involved with sales. Now, for ETC and a lot of both the commercial lighting market and theatrical lighting market, sales can happen on several different levels. And it's always happening at several different levels. The actual sale of the product can kind of go a couple different ways, right? So at ETC, at the top of our chain, we have regional sales managers, okay? And they have territories. So we've got the Midwest territory, the Northeast territory, and there's a regional sales manager who's responsible for that entire territory, okay? And then the sales manager usually has at least one field project coordinator that works under them. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about, that's what Spencer does, he's a field project coordinator. Think of them more as kind of a technical, I'm gonna get this wrong. Technical support for sales. So they're kind of people that have a good technical background in theater, a good technical background with ETC and our products and how our products go together. And when we're working on the front end to sell a new system or sell a new product, these are the people that, a regional salesperson will look at to say, yeah, now I'm going to let Spencer talk for a little bit about the technology and about how that can interface with what you already have. You've got a strand dimming system. We're going to sell you an ETC console. Spencer's going to talk to you about, hey, this is why that can work. And hopefully in that, then he'll try to swing in there why they need to get rid of their strand dimmers. But he's kind of a technical support for the sales department, okay? So that's ETC, Regional Sales Manager, Field Project Coordinator. They have a territory, okay? And they're all of our regional managers are, at one point came from theater backgrounds. So it's a whole line of work, this kind of sales route at ETC or in the industry. You know, it can be salespeople. You tend to go from technical into some sort of administrative, into sales, into consulting, right? That's kind of, if you wanted to follow that career path, that's kind of one career path you could follow, okay? So in the ETC world, under these regional managers, we have what are called sales representatives or sales reps, okay? And our sales reps they're on contract, so they deal as far as theatrical lighting, they deal with ETC exclusively, okay? And they've got territories. So the territory could be a state or a part of a state or in big metropolitan areas. You know, they may have just, you know, one city, if it's a big city. And then under the sales reps, I'm gonna talk about reps and dealers, you have the dealers and distributors, okay? So we have sales reps and dealers and distributors. So reps have a territory. All the dealers in that territory kind of work not for or under is not a good term, but they work under the umbrella of the rep for that territory. And every people in that sales chain, everybody in that sales chain is from a theater background. And there's a lot of them, right? That's at the rep agency, that's at the dealership, that's at ETC in the sales department. All theater majors, top to bottom. Every now and again you get somebody that's not a theater major, but by and large they're all theater majors, okay? At the dealership even. The dealership, at the rep agency. So any questions about kind of how that relationship works, that sales chain? That's where a lot, especially if you're studying lighting, and if you're here at Q, you know, most of you have some sort of lighting. You're here because we're a lighting company, you're at our Q event. I don't imagine there are too many like exclusive technical directors. There may be some of you out there. But in the lighting world, this idea of dealerships are huge, and there are a lot of dealerships, right? There are only a few manufacturers. And in ETC's world, there's a handful of reps across the country, but there are a lot of dealers. And those are working with customers, they're doing small shows, they're doing counter sales. So it's very, very important. I mean, the dealer network from an ETC perspective is huge. Our entire business is built with the work our dealers do, because they're in the locations with our customers. Okay, now we're back to consultants, okay? Theatrical consultants specifically. So we talked about them a little early. They're here again because they're part of the chain. They've written the specification on the front end with the architect, okay? At some point, when we have to supply the system and install it, we have to be looking at their specification. A good example of this is there's you know, a path to being a consultant. In Minneapolis, about 4.5 hours from here, for those of you that don't know the Midwest very well, there's a consulting firm called Schuller & Shook. We've worked with Schuller & Shook for a very, very long time. They've done theatrical consulting. They've specified a lot of ETC equipment over the years. Okay, one of the people that's a consultant in Schuller & Shook is a guy named Michael Burgoyne. And he's been consulting at Schuller & Shook. He's an associate or a senior. I don't know his job title, but he's a consultant at Schuller & Shook. Well, Michael Burgoyne was a year ahead of me in college. So we went to college together in North Carolina. I left to come to ETC. He went off, he did some touring, and then he got a job at the Guthrie, a house position at the Guthrie Theater. Fairly substantial, Lord A. I think it's Lord A. Spencer, Lord A? Lord A Theater, Guthrie. A lot of good productions coming out of the Guthrie. And he did technical work, he did lighting design, so he was doing production. And he was from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, so it made sense that he got back and got a job at the Guthrie. Great job. Worked there for a number of years, and then eventually got into consulting through various connections, through Dwayne Schuller, who was a fairly, almost a resident designer at the Guthrie, but designs a lot at the Guthrie, designs at the Chicago Lyric Opera. And then he was one of the principals at Schuller & Shook, and eventually Michael migrated to that world. So that's kind of, there's another career path. I went to college, I got a degree in lighting, I did some production, I went on tour, I went to a house, I moved to consulting. okay? So for a lighting designer, it's a definite path out of production. And once again, you'll find a common theme of these moves. You know, right now you think about, oh, I want to go do production. I want to go on tour. And that's fine. I encourage you to go do it, especially if you're younger. If you're still in college, you're getting out of college, go do it. Because it's a young person's game, for the most part, for most of us. But at some point, after 5 or 6 years, you meet somebody, you want to start a family, you're not going to want to be on tour all the time then. You're going to have something more stable. Maybe not everybody. I've got a lot of good friends who still go on tour and still do shows and still do gig work, a lot of gig work. But a lot of people want to settle down eventually. And that's why this becomes important, this idea of having a non-production career, an 8-to-5 job, a medical and dental plan, a 401k retirement plan, right? All of these things go along with all of these companies. So the next thing in our little chain of events for a project is quotations and project management. And quotations at ETC is architect, engineer, consultant, specification. This is what the theater needs to have. A quotes person takes that specification, reads through it. Oh, need a lighting console, needs this many channels, need dimming system, need network gear, need LED fixtures. And they decide, okay, based on the specification, and a lot of them are literally that vague. Some of them are detailed. Require a lighting console. If we're lucky, it says require an ETC lighting console. It's like, well, it says. Maybe they have to buy ETC. But normally they're generic. Require a lighting console has to do these 1,000 things. Sometimes there are pages of what the lighting console has to do. But quotations, both at the dealer sometimes or at ETC, looks at the specification and says, okay, this is what they need for a lighting console. These are the consoles we sell. They need an ion console. So I'll quote, this is their price on an ion console. They need 192 channels of dimming. Okay, we'll sell them a sensor rack or 2. How many? 2, 192. They'll need 2 racks, right? Somebody tell me I'm right, 2 racks? Yep, 2 racks, 192 dimmers. So they'll read the specification and decide what ETC equipment is needed to meet the specification. And that's quotations, right? ETC is just dealing with lighting equipment, but on the dealer end, a lot of dealers have in-house quotations. At a dealer level, they'll probably do quotes and project manager. It's probably the same person, unless they're a larger dealership. But they're not only supplying, they're asking us for a quote, but they're also maybe dealing with somebody who's supplying the sound equipment and the consumables. We're buying lights from ETC, but we need lamps, so we have to give a quote to the owner on lamps. Okay, so that's quotations. At ETC, those are all, I think they're all from stage management backgrounds. Oddly enough, I think it's a department of production managers and stage managers. No. Not all? Oh. I'll pretend they're all. No. What other careers out there in quotations? Lighting design, yeah, but clear theater backgrounds. Yeah, I mean technical theater backgrounds for quotes, because for quotes, you have to kind of understand the theater and all the components because you have to read through these specifications and pick stuff out, okay? So in the end, they quote it, right? We read, for my theater, back to the beginning, my theater I'm building, somebody in quotes at ETC writes a quote, okay, there it is. It's $100,000 worth of lighting equipment. That's the quote to the dealer. And the dealer has to add in everything else they're supplying, and they give the final quote back to a couple different people. Could be the distributor, could be the electrical contractor, could be the bid general. If it's private money, it could be directly back to the owner, the consultant, right? But in the end, they bundle and they say, okay, the full for everything for the theater is $200,000 because they're adding in everything else that's needed, right? And I go, great, I just got a ton more money from some rich guy and I can spend that on my lighting system. We place the order. I place the order with the dealer places an order with ETC. Now it's a project or it's a system, right? We have systems, we have projects that we're working on. Here at ETC, we call it the systems group. So it's a group of departments that are working to put a system together. At a dealer level, it's generally a projects group or a projects person who's managing that specific project for the dealer, okay? Once again, usually theater people, technical theater people, are doing project management at ETC, okay? It's a place where a lot of people have come into, out of the production world, into project management. For those of you that are like, I want to go work at ETC someday, any of those out there? I want to work at ETC? A couple people? I've been here too long. Anybody that's been at ETC already too long? Yes, maybe me, 17 years. But I love it, so I want to stay. They say, well, how do you get started? Because normally, you know, they're like, oh, I want to work at ETC and I want to work on consoles. I love consoles, I love programming. Well, okay. Maybe technical services, because we do support. Maybe field service, because they install new lighting systems and have to do training. Maybe R&D. I didn't talk about this earlier, but R&D has a department called test. It's the R&D test department. So every new version of console code that comes out has to be put into a console, and test routines. We have to make sure, we have to look for bugs. We spend weeks programming different things into the console, finding something, right? And then we release the software, and some 8-year-old at an elementary school finds a bug in the first hour it's on the market. I mean, we can't help it, it happens. You know, there's so many combinations you can do with the console. But there's an entire test department that tests software on lighting consoles as a career. I mean, there's some people, there's a couple great people that have been up there for several years that have worked in the test department. So, test department is one area where people have come in from the outside, but project management, if you want to come to ETC, quotations, project management, and we'll get to technical services, are kind of the places that tend to be entryways into ETC to kind of get your non-production career if you're looking at ETC. And that tends to be true across manufacturers, right? I try to be a little neutral, you know, so you don't have to like be all ETC, 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 although I prefer it. But project managers, and the one thing, at the dealer level, project managers are very involved. You feel like you're working on a theater project, right? You're dealing with the customer, you're in your dealership where you probably have other responsibilities, you know, maybe you're working on a couple projects. Project management at ETC is a very different thing. Because one of the key things a project manager at ETC is doing is they're dealing with manufacturing. Because we have drawings, and yeah, we're talking to the consultant about, okay, are you sure this is what you want? You have a console, you have dimmers, but you didn't specify a network. How are these things talking? Okay, let's work that out, right? They make sure the system's really gonna work together, that all the right parts have been ordered to make it work together. And that's fine, that's theater oriented. They're talking with consultants, they're talking with owners. They're also talking with the electrical contractor who's on site pulling cable. You know, is he pulling the right cable? Is it gonna work? He's got questions about how our gear goes together because he's never installed theater dimmings before. The project manager on the other side, though, is working with ETC manufacturing. In terms of manufacturing, we do what's called just-in-time. Sometimes just-in-time manufacturing and lean manufacturing is another thing that we do at ETC, which means we kind of take orders and then we build them. We keep some stuff in stock for box product sales, but for systems, we get your order and we build your whole system. So the project manager needs to coordinate all the timing of, I've ordered my new theater, and I've forked over $100,000 for my lighting equipment, and I've scheduled my gala opening. Right, and I'll tell you, if you get into this business, the gala opening is always scheduled before they've even broken ground on the new theater. And the date is immovable, usually. We're gonna open on this day. We're gonna have our show, we're gonna open it. And then that kind of drives the entire production and build. All the equipment, all the suppliers, all the installation gets driven by that date. It's not, I'm being overly dramatic, it's not always the case, but it always seems that way. It's like, we're opening on the 5th. Well, you just placed your order on the 4th, so I don't think you're opening on the 5th. No, we're opening on the 5th, no matter what. But the project manager has to manage all that from the owner, from the consultant. He's got to convince manufacturing, hey, you guys got to work double shifts, you guys need to work a weekend shift because we've got to get these 2 dimmer racks built and shipped out to Mike's theater. I need a cool name for my theater. Meskill Arts Theater. I'll be Meskill Arts Theater. So that's what project managers are doing. So a very different thing. It's kind of, it's still in the theater. It's still working in lighting, but it's not your traditional, even non-production career in theater, okay? That's project management. Next thing is field service coordinator. I'll just talk about this briefly. These are essentially administrative positions that coordinate the installation and warranty and non-warranty service work of technicians all over the country. These don't tend to be people that are from theatrical background, but they're an important interface in this handoff between kind of projects, getting everything to the site, and the work that has to get done to actually make the lighting system come to life, which is a function of technical services. So the field project coordinator is kind of spanning that gulf. Here we literally call it a handoff. A project literally gets from quotes and project management and gets handed over to service, and that happens via the field service coordinator. So, and we've got great field service coordinators. Okay, the next position. Another place you see a lot of lighting designers or people with general theater degrees with interest in lighting is ETC field service technician. Now, I can say ETC field service technician, they come in two forms. They come in what we call factory technicians, which is how I started at ETC as an ETC factory technician. It's how Spencer Lyons started at ETC, was as a factory technician. He was an ETC employee, okay? The other flavor that they come in is what we call ASCs, authorized service centers and authorized service providers, okay? These are contract techs, is a loose term we say. They're a contract tech. And they're people that we pay to go do work for us on behalf of ETC. Usually they're technicians at a dealership. They're normally, in most cases, they're associated to a dealership. Maybe they started at the dealership, then they did little rental, they worked in the rental department, they got hired to go do little industrial events, little bus and truck shows. They got a little more knowledge, and eventually the owner of the dealership sent them to ETC to get trained to be a service provider. And we hold training at ETC, we certify people to do work for us, okay? It's a very common model, right? If you call Dell, if your laptop's under warranty and it's got a problem, you call Dell, they're like, oh, we're gonna send a service tech. He can be there tomorrow at 8 a.m. Oh, great. Guy shows up, he fixes your laptop. That guy doesn't work from Dell, right? His paycheck doesn't come from Dell. He works for a local company that's got a service contract with Dell. And they come out, they've got parts, they fix your Dell computer, they send a bill back to Dell. ETC uses that same model through our dealer network and our independent service network. And there are a lot of people out there that do that kind of work, that are doing installation, warranty service, programming work on behalf of ETC, that aren't ETC employees. Some people do a lot of it. And guys earn we have people that earn a substantial part of their living through doing work for us, but they're employees of another company, okay? So that's a field service technician. We have another form of technician called a unison paradigm technician. How many people know what paradigm is? Unison? No? No unison? DAS? AAS? No, nothing. These are architectural systems. ETC's current architectural system is the unison paradigm system, and it's the architectural system. And it requires, there's a lot of software programming involved. The hardware is relatively easy to install, the hardware part of it, but it has to be programmed. So you have to sit at your laptop and, it's this overwhelming program. It can be simple, you can do really simple things, but it can be very complex. And we train technicians, we train all of the technicians on how to use it, but we have some specialists that specialize in programming unison paradigm systems. And if you become a specialist and you become very good at it, we have a step above that called the Advanced Programming Group, the APG. And then if we have a big system that we need help with as ETC, we need extra manpower, we hire these guys in on a contract basis to program big shows. Once again, all theater lighting people, for the most part, theater lighting backgrounds. Whole nother set of work, just programming systems. This goes for AMX. If you've heard of AMX programming, they're kind of a Johnson Controls. They're an HVAC company. They do lighting, they do sound. Crestron controls, right? Those are all different companies, all of which have service networks, all with people with audio, video, and lighting backgrounds that are programming their systems for them. And it's a massive industry that you just don't think about. But people with my background, with a lot of your background in lighting, find their way to those jobs. And there's a lot of jobs. So when you're just getting frustrated, like, I can't get on a tour, those jobs are out there. The purpose of this class is to kind of plant the seeds so that 6 years from now you're thinking, hey, I'm gonna get married now and I wanna have a 9-to-5 job. You'll think, hey, Mike told me about all those jobs, what were they? And what'll happen is I start getting, I get emails all the time. Can you send me that PowerPoint you did 4 years ago? Or do you have a job for me? That's the biggest one, right? Emails. I wanna come work at ETC, I've worked professionally for 3 years. Do you have a job for me? No, because I'm the international service man. I don't have any employees in the US, so I probably don't have a job for you. But I digress. Unison paradigm technician. The next thing is the end user, okay? Field service technician goes out, installs a new theater. End user, we also talked about earlier, the person actually using the gear, the person we're gonna train on the equipment. They're gonna work with the ETC installer on site. The ETC installer is often, more times than not, the theatrical dealer that was involved in the project originally, right? I'm not gonna contract some other dealer to go work with a customer who bought from the dealer who's got the project. And most of our dealers have technicians associated with them, okay? So now my system's installed, everybody's happy, I got my new ETC lighting system. Until we're not happy, until something breaks and it's under warranty. Now I'm really upset. I got to call and yell at somebody because my system broke, and that's phone support. When I was an intern, I started in helping in phone support and field service, and when I came to ETC, I did both phone support and field service. And I'll tell you, phone support is often a thankless job. But you have to be really smart. You have to know the equipment, right? If something breaks at mom and pop's wedding chapel, they call phone support. And if something breaks at the Lion King on Broadway, I don't think it's on Broadway anymore, but they call phone support, right? Both ends of the spectrum. You could be talking to a priest or a nun or a rabbi one second, get off with them, and be talking to a top Broadway lighting designer or a lighting board operator on the next phone call, right? Tough job. But you learn a lot by doing it. That's why it's a popular entry point if you talk about coming into ETC, right? In turnover, I work in management. I'll confess, I've lost touch with how to use most of our equipment. I've been in management about 15 years now. And you have what's called turnover in management. You lose employees, employees quit, employees, oh, they get promoted, they go somewhere else. Well, technical services has a high turnover rate of employees. So it means we're constantly cycling employees out and we have to hire new employees, right? Because our turnover is so high. But our turnover is almost entirely internal. People leave technical services to go to marketing, to go to R&D, to go to projects, to go to sales, right? We've kind of developed this thing, you know, it becomes a big joke. It's like, oh no, we've lost another one. But so that's why it's an entry point. Same with project management. A lot of people moved out of either quotes or project management into other areas. Quotes and project managers tend to go to marketing for some reason. I don't know why. Somebody will explain it to me someday. But technical phone support, you learn a lot. And you learn a lot about ETC and you learn a lot about the different departments at ETC because you interact with them all. Because if you can't figure it out, you've got to call the R&D guy. Hey, we've got this problem, I can't figure it out. You work with R&D. Technical support people are involved in product development, new product development. Important stuff. Technical, well, to me, important stuff because it's the department I live in, so of course it's important.